What's up? Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for making that click to get here to this podcast. I'm so excited to share with you episode 1 of the Elev8 podcast. Not sure on the format and the future of this and how we'll roll with it all, but to start out, I'm going to be interviewing some of the people that I go to consult with, learn from, and absorb the most about the things that I teach athletes, coaches, and just for my own personal life. Episode 1 here, I've got one of my favorites, Mr. Brian Kight. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at @TBrianKight. That's Kight, K-I-G-H-T. I highly recommend you go to his website, dailydiscipline.com. Click and subscribe to his daily discipline emails. That is the most fire that hits my inbox. I'm so excited to have with us on episode 1, Mr. Brian Kight. Let's roll. Brian, why do you love teaching and educating people on discipline so much?
It's a funny question the question is a very relevant one. I should say that the answer is probably what's funny. The question is straightforward. That I don't get to talk about that often, which I find ironic in one way, but also very practical in another. Have you ever taken the Strengths Finders assessment? You ever done that?
A long time ago. It's been a while. Yeah.
So basically, what the Strengths Finders is, for those of you who don't know, is it's a book that essentially identifies, I think it's about 35 or 36 strengths that human beings can have. And could be ranging from strategic to persuasion to empathy to focus and clarity or drive. It's all these different strengths that people have, right? And you basically do this assessment, and it gives you your top 5 strengths, and then now with the newer versions, it gives you your top 5, and then it gives you your next 5 that are like the supporting ones. And the entire premise is to lean into the strength, right? Lean into what you're good at, so that you can leverage and capture the stuff that comes more naturally to you and build on top of it.
Yeah.
Well, come to find out, since they just released an update on their programming, on their content. And so they sent me sort of the new report from what my assessment was. And I looked it up, and this time it has every strength listed out in order, like 1 through 36, right? And I looked at it, and discipline for me was ranked 34 out of 36. It was the opposite of strength,
Yeah.
right? And why I get so excited about it, Tyler, is because I am not naturally disciplined.
Me
I'm not.
either. Right.
And I'm definitely not naturally disciplined by the definition that discipline normally gets used, which I fight. I'm still fighting to redefine discipline for people so they can rediscover it. But I'm like allergic to compliance. Obedience is like the plague for me. It always has been. Which, at times when I needed to be obedient, maybe in younger years of my life, it didn't serve me particularly well. But the reason I get excited about it is for a couple reasons. And I just share that because it's for me, it's funny that I'm mostly excited about it because of my own journey on how to use discipline well and how important it has been for me as a skill. And why I get excited about it is a handful of reasons. First and foremost, there is no other skill that unlocks every other part of your life better than discipline.
Right.
Like, it's the one thing that unlocks everything else. I can make a case for courage, but courage just gets you started. It's that first step, and you can be courageous and dumb. And I suppose you could be disciplined and dumb too, but you can be courageous and making bad decisions, but do so with courage. So courage is like that spark, right? Discipline is a way to turn that light back on and keep that fire burning to drive all of the improvement in the action. So discipline is the one skill that improves everything else, which is why I get so excited about it. If you can build courage and discipline into your life, it doesn't matter what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go, like you are going to have a really good shot. Number two is because the fastest path between where you are and where you want to get is through discipline. Yeah. And I think people misunderstand that. People regard discipline or think of discipline still as this rigid, boring, kind of long, blah, 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 blah. And the truth of the matter is, if you want to get somewhere and get what you want and get there as fast as you possibly can, discipline is the shortest path available. And so that's why I push people into this understanding discipline is the shortcut. Like if you're looking for quicker results, the earlier you're on the path of discipline, the faster you'll get there. So those are the big core reasons. One, it's still very real for me. Two, I don't think people understand how important discipline is. And number three, I don't think they even still understand what discipline is, and they kind of reject it offhand based on what they've absorbed around the definition to this point in their life.
Right. The kind of great lead in kind of the next question. Some of those misunderstandings or misconceptions or differences in today. What do you find some of the greatest misunderstandings with the application of discipline with youth and college athletes that you see a lot?
Well, I'll go to the one that athletes hear a lot because coaches say it a lot. And that is discipline is doing what you were supposed to do, the way you were taught to do it, when you were told to do it.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this on other podcasts, other places before. With love and respect for those who pass that message on, that's not discipline. That's obedience.
Right. Yep.
And I just tell coaches all the time, look, there's nothing wrong with obedience. In fact, there's things right with obedience, but you have to know what you're asking for. If you want obedience, then tell them that you want obedience. Don't tell them you want discipline. If you want obedience, obedience is, listen, I am going to tell you what to do, how to do it, when you do it, and you do what I say. Like that's only one thing.
Yeah.
And that is obedience. It's not anything. That's what it is. So I don't mind that. In fact, as a CEO and an owner of a business, there's times where, hey, you don't have flexibility here. You don't have choice. I am dictating what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how it's going to happen. You don't have flexibility.
Right.
So there's that, right? So that's what players hear a lot. And what I really stress to the coaches and to players is that discipline isn't compliance and obedience. Discipline is choice. Discipline is choosing for yourself. Now, as an athlete or an employee, I can choose to do what I'm being asked to do the way I was asked to do it. The difference is where it comes from.
Sure.
And this is the big one. The common definition of discipline is that the source of discipline is from the outside coming in.
Right.
And the reality of discipline is that discipline does not come from the outside. Discipline comes from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling a group of athletes over the weekend. I was actually talking to a bunch of business people and referring back to actually when they were athletes for those who did. It was you ever play basketball or do one of the conditionings where basketball is just a commonplace. Football, I suppose, did it a lot as well, where you ran and you had to touch the line.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Touch the line, right? Touch the line, or football's toes behind the line, all that stuff. And a lot of times it was imposed, be disciplined, and they would yell at the athletes, be disciplined, touch the line. And so often you see still athletes touch the line because the coaches yell at it.
Yep.
And what I wanted to make sure they understand is obedience or compliance is touching the line because the coach said so or because there was a rule that said so. Discipline is touching the line because it matters to you.
Yeah. Yep.
Discipline is touching that line because that specificity, that inch, that detail, that willingness to perform a task up to standard even when you're tired and under pressure, and it mattering to you and you knowing how that connects to something else, that's discipline. I can go through the motions for compliance and obedience.
Right.
I can't do it with discipline because discipline, I have to make an active choice and back it up with action. So I think that's one of the big common misconceptions that I hear from athletes is athletes are looking for discipline to come from somewhere else.
Sure.
And then what they're left with is they're left for just looking inside themselves for motivation. And, motivation varies. I was reading something that I read all old books, right? And so I was reading something that I referred to a lot to somebody the other day, and it was actually to a group of athletes talking about leadership. And I was highlighting to them because they were talking about how, they just get frustrated that, the players aren't consistent, or they will put in 2 or 3 good weeks or 2 or 3 good months, and then it won't keep up for long. Right. And so let me share some insight with you guys. And I pulled this book out, and this book was written 2,000 years ago, and it was talking about the Roman army. Or no, I'm sorry. This was 500 years ago, and this was in France. So this was the French army, and basically what it said was this. It said nothing is so variable day to day as the human heart. The courage to go out and do what is necessary must be reborn daily. Yeah. There is nothing more important in a leader than being able to create that in your people. I paraphrased sort of, they used some fancier French language back 500 years ago, but that's what it said, right? And the key piece is nothing is so variable as the human heart. Courage has to be reborn daily. So if I just replace courage with discipline, which I can put them in that context, the same basic word or at least intent, it's thinking that somehow yesterday's discipline buys you, I don't know, some kind of bank that you filled up for today's discipline, and it just doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't. It's just new choices all over again. And everybody at some point wakes up in some form or fashion thinking, boy, I just want it to be a little easier today than it was yesterday. Right. And especially if I put in a bunch of work now, like, when do I get to? And the answer is never. People don't want to hear this, but look, the answer is never.
Yeah.
It's never. I just came back this weekend, right? I just came back from LA for a friend of mine who died last week for celebration of life. He was 51 years old, 52, died of colon cancer, found out at the end of March, made it to, whatever that was, first week of November or so. It took him out pretty quickly. So for me, it's top of mind in that context of, we look for relief, or we look for breaks, or we look for what, and there's really only one time when we get away from that, and that's literally when we die.
Yeah.
Every other day you wake up and it's like, it's on. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's on.
Yeah.
And so in the athletics space where, we're not dealing with life and death, we look too often for either one, discipline to be a source that comes from outside of us, right? Which then we start looking for motivation. And what happens is pretty quickly when the motivation isn't inside us that day, which, day to day we wake up, like it's just not in you or me or anybody else every day, we start looking for motivation to come from somewhere else. And I want to make sure athletes have an understanding of discipline is something you create for yourself from the inside out, and you're not reliant on anything around you, and that's what makes it so powerful. And then the third piece is that between the motivation and the discipline is constantly looking like somehow yesterday's work or 3 months of stacked discipline will now carry for another, and it never carries. It wakes up and we have to renew it every single day. This is why people like your Peyton Mannings, your Tom Brady's, your Kobe Bryant's, your Michael Jordan's, your LeBron James's, that on top of their talent, they put and stack discipline on top of it that they renew on the daily. Yep. And it turns people with that kind of talent into legends.
No doubt. So for some of the listeners that might not know your journey, can you talk a little bit about how you became a speaker going around the country and coaching and working with the teams you do?
Well, first of all, how do you not know my journey? How do you not know my life's story already? It should be no. It's still amazing to me that that's even a topic of conversation. Yeah, I'll give you the brief version, and if you want to double click on any of them, I'm happy to. I grew up in California and wanted to be in a place. I was a college football player, wanted to play college football in a place where it was like the center of the universe, and that was not California. So I went to Ohio, played at Worcester in Ohio, and I noticed something through my entire career, and it really became acute for me in college just because I think I got older and saw more and was at the sort of at higher levels. What I noticed was really two things. One is that the quality of the actual behavior or leadership on players and on coaching staffs did not increase the higher I got. Meaning, as I went from middle school, grade school, middle school, freshman, JV, varsity, college, like the quality of the coaching and the leadership of coaches did not keep moving on pace as I went from level to level, and I thought it would.
Sure.
It didn't drop off a cliff. It just wasn't. It didn't. Scale up, so to speak. Right.
Yep.
And more kind of stayed flat, if you will. And then number two was, it didn't really filter out even the quality of the behavior or the discipline or focus of the athletes. And, a lot of times, the athletes were better, obviously, in college than they were on the whole in high school, sure, which you expect, right? But the discipline and the focus and the work ethic and all those things didn't. And so I recognized these two things, and I'm not physically talented at a level. I was always the smallest person on the football field. I played at 5'9", 180 pounds. So I was always that guy. And my ability to compete and perform, which I had a super fun career, it was entirely based on behaviors, not physical talent. Sure. It was my ability to think and prepare and stay calm under pressure and not feel anxiety and process information faster so that I could make decisions quicker, so that maybe I wasn't as fast as the next guy, but I was kind of a step ahead because of all those different things. And I heard these things described as intangible. I always thought they were tangible and they could be taught. So when I graduated college, number one, that was number one, by the way, the scale didn't grow. And number two, I recognized coaches were the least coached profession in America.
Yep.
Nobody gets less coaching than coaches. Just kind of the way it's unfolded, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I graduated college and I said, I want to be the guy who coaches coaches. And I was at 22 and I went out and completely failed. I did a year of trying to do that, and I got 0 clients who paid me $0. And I think I got 0 second meetings with coaches. And the reason was because I just wasn't good enough. Right? I saw it, but I wasn't capable of teaching something, delivering value, connecting in a way that coaches valued. And that's, that was 100%. I wish I had video of that guy. I mean, I got a ton of video of this guy now, but I wish I had video of that guy, which would be fun to see, right? Yeah. Because I'm sure in one way I'd be proud of the effort, but I'd actually be embarrassed with the product, which is really cool. So I went out and so I went into business, and I went in business with my dad, who had done kind of consulting and speaking. And so I had an environment I'd grown up in where we talked about that kind of stuff, and he had done that stuff on his own for a while. And so I joined him. I thought business would be boring, which is why I tried to avoid it initially. And I realized, like in 2 or 3 business engagements, that business was just as exciting as sports. And I connected to individuals and leadership and team and competitive nature and how business makes money or loses money, gains market, loses market, all the different things, and being able to teach leadership, culture, behavior skills, discipline, all this stuff to apply to hospitals, manufacturing firms, accounting firms, law firms, insurance companies, and all these different formats. And then did that business for 10 years, took over as CEO of Focus 3, the company. Yes. And right after I took over as CEO, we met Urban Meyer at Ohio State and started working with Ohio State and Urban Meyer. So it was a decade after I tried to start the coaches side. So it only took me 10 years to get my first athletic client. And that was back in 2012 or 13, something like that. And then from there, and working with Ohio State and Urban Meyer, that brand was one that obviously they had a bunch of success. Sure. We were fortunate enough to sort of catch a little bit of wind in terms of our impact on the program and on Coach Meyer. with E plus R equals O and a few other things that we put in there. And then those two brands are pretty national. And so from there, a lot of other coaches and places started paying attention, and the athletics took off. So it went from 0 to 100 really fast from an athletics perspective. And then we're recording this in November, right? So just maybe 6 months ago or so, I stepped out of Focus 3, the business that I was owning and running with my dad, and stepped out of Focus 3 to go on to my own venture here with dailydiscipline.com and a couple other things, focusing on some of the markets that I really wanted to dial into serving. And so that business, Focus 3, is still going strong, and I'm doing amazing work.
Sure.
And so now I'm over here focused on a couple other things that are a little closer to where I want to be spending my time and energy.
As you described, went 0 to 100 with some of the athletic stuff. Being around some great coaches and teams and athletes, is there a lesson or something you learned in that process from a team or coach that kind of stuck out to you?
Yeah. So, I think one of the cool parts about my work and specifically my experience is I get to be around so many different kinds of coaches, so many different environments, not just the athletic space, but all of the different spaces. One of the things that early on working with Coach Meyer that really stood out to me was I remember he said a phrase and he repeated it over and over and over and over to the staff and to the team of don't be confused. Like if you're not successful, if it's not working, if you don't have what you want, if things aren't ideal, we can pull it out to whatever it is, right? And he used this phrase, he would say, don't be confused why that's the case. Like, don't have confusion. Don't ask why with like a hands up, like, well, why is this even happening? And then like that's the end. He's like, look, if there's something that's going on, like there are reasons.
Yeah. Find
them, figure them out, address them, get the, and so that really stuck out to me. Don't be confused. Don't be surprised. And it connects right to the context of athletes. If you're not starting, like, don't be surprised.
Right.
Don't be confused. Like, there's a reason. And it's not because coach hates me.
Yep.
It's not because, coach just doesn't. Of course, coaches like some kids more than other kids because human beings like some human beings more than other human beings. And so, of course, that's there. But coaches are not in the business of losing games.
Nope.
Coaches are not in the business of, bad performance. I mean, sometimes they teach lessons and all these different things, but at the end of the day, coaches are in this business. So they're in this business of trying to win and compete and put the best team out there. So that was a lesson that really hit me, like really straightforward of, okay, like this is, and it's a quality of his that was particularly unique, right? Of we're gonna shine a light on everything, and you're gonna get in his program. You're gonna get exposed.
Yeah.
When you get exposed, you're gonna see it all.
Right.
There ain't gonna be confusion as to why you're successful or why you're not, why you're starting, why you're not, why you're only on kickoff and you're not starting at the slot receiver or whatever it happens to be. So that was one that really got a hold of me when I heard him addressing that, and then I thought was not only valuable for the team, but also a lesson I wanted to pull into my life and say, okay, I want to make sure that's part of my DNA also.
Yeah, no doubt. So you mentioned a little bit in your journey, in your playing career, how we don't see this linear track in coaching profession. And I was at an event years ago, and Joe Ehrman was making a couple hundred people chart coaches, right? And I watched all these coaches, rate these coaches all they had, simply 1 to 10. And I just kind of use that example as that it looked like an irregular heartbeat for everyone's experience with coaches.
Yeah.
And
for me, what really hit home was, coaching kids and working with other coaches was, man, just don't be a bottom dot. Don't, it kind of, when I hear you guys talk about above the line, it's like, there's a lot of coaches below that line, in people's lives and history. And, was there a coach that, really stood out that, that was up there for you as far as, helping you create clarity and had a great impact on you?
There weren't many of them for me. And I want to make sure I want to make sure I'm really, really, really clear on this and honest as well, because, some of the coaches, I'm still friends and buddies with them now. And we, talk on the regular and a lot of good dudes. And so I don't ever want any of them to feel, something personal about different things. But the truth of the matter is, no, I didn't have a ton that I would put into, or many that I would put into that category in that fashion. I had some, I think they each had pieces and components, right? And it's very typical of the human experience, right? Like it's somebody who's very nice, but a little lenient, right? Where they're nice, but they don't uphold the standard. And so, do you get credit for being really nice if you're also slacking on the standard and let people take advantage of you? Like, which one do we really pay attention to? And it's both is the answer, right? It's all of it. And depending on what the context was, it could change. So I will say this, that the coach that came to my mind was the coach that recruited me to Worcester, a guy by the name of Doug Haas. And I only got one semester with him because I did a semester at Worcester, and then I actually dropped out of school and went back to California. I think he was there the next year, and then he ended up taking another job. I think he got a high school job, and then now he's actually coaching in Worcester as a high school coach. But I only got one semester with him, but it was my freshman semester in college. It was a rough semester transitioning from California to Amish country, Ohio. And Doug was really good to me, right? He had standards, but he was patient. He was understanding of, some tough things I was going through, and had some family stuff that we were dealing with as well. And he did what I think, not just good coaches, but what good men do, and he was there. He listened, and he worked hard to understand where I was, as opposed to rushing into what he wanted from me or what he thought I should do. And so looking back, it's hard for this version of me to connect back to 18-year-old version of me and kind of appreciate all of that. But I can look back and say, that's something I wish I really would have gotten to play for more and be around more, because, he invested in me, believed in me, and helped me through a certain time period where I genuinely needed it. And so I was really, really appreciative of that. Really appreciative.
Awesome. Great story. So if you don't follow Brian on Instagram, we'll link it up here. But if you do, you will find out 2 of his pet peeves are people running in the airports, and if there's not an option to take the stairs, which I also always like to look for that option when it's there. Denver airport, they're getting a little away from the stairs. But what's your worst pet peeve? Seeing someone run by you in the airport or not having an option to take the stairs?
No doubt, running in the airport. And people ask me this all the time. And listen,
give it some depth. Give it.
I'm gonna listen. No, look, I'm gonna give it depth, and it's gonna make sense. And by the way, for whatever it's worth, there's parts of this that are personal opinion, and then there's parts of this that are just straight objective fact. Okay. Now, if my wife were in here, she would immediately tell you that I'm an idiot and that run in the airport is fine. She runs in the airport, and we disagree on this, and that's fine. Okay. And I will tell you from personal experience that under pressure, my wife is susceptible to run in the airport, but I will not. Here's 2 things, okay? Subjective. Have you ever seen someone run in the airport and maintain their dignity? If you watch people running in the airport, you can't run in the airport and maintain dignity. It's just this sloppy mess. It's like a halfway kind of run. Yeah. nothing you're carrying or have with you is designed to be run with. And also, if we're also going to be fully honest, if you watch the people who do run in airports, they're almost always the people who chose poor baggage to begin with, right? Yes. They're wearing shoes not designed for running. They've got like long, loose baggage that flops everywhere, right? They're running in flip-flops. So that's number one, okay? It's just not a good look, and it's not there. Here's the objective part of this. The objective part of this is running is not going to influence whether you make your flight or not. By the time you're at a spot where you think you need to run, you have either already missed your flight or you're going to make your flight without running. Because like the longest distance, and I've been calculating this because people have been pressing me on this, right? So I'm like, okay, well, let's get real then. Let's actually do some stuff. And you start making it real for people and you find out they don't want to have this conversation. How far, like what's the total max amount of time, or how about this? What's the total distance you would run in an airport? Like what's the fastest, not the fastest, what's the longest distance you would ever have to go from point A to point B in an airport? Like what would be the max distance?
Ooh, I mean, it can go a couple miles.
Right? And if you're doing a couple miles, okay, if you're doing a couple miles, you're riding a train.
Yeah, you're getting some sort of transpo in between.
Cool, right. In which case, don't worry about running. So what's the total time on foot, or the total distance on foot that you would be needing to travel, like on foot? If you had to go a mile in an airport on foot,
right,
that would be a long way, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, okay, you running at what you would call an aggressive pace. How fast would you run a mile?
Oh, 7 minutes,
7 minutes, okay. Now, let's say you did a not as aggressive pace, maybe an 8.5 minute mile.
Right.
So you're designed to run at a pretty aggressive pace for a mile is 7 minutes. If you backed off that and ran hard, but not that hard, you save 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Now tell me, how fast is a person running in an airport? Are they running at the same speed that you'd be running a mile when you're just on a track?
Not at a good clip.
Not at a good clip. So when someone's running in an airport, number one, they're not running a mile. So their time savings aren't even 90 seconds. We're talking like even if you ran at full speed, you'd be saving 30 seconds. You're not running at full speed. You're running about a half mile. Your total time savings is probably like 17 seconds. And you look at what people give up for 17 seconds and they're like sweating, the anxiety. And I'm like,
at people.
I'm like this.
Strangers.
You're not making or missing that flight in that 17-second window. So walk, stay calm, get there under control, and then you've made or missed the flight and you can make your decisions after that. So subjectively, it's kind of a dignity issue for me. Sure. Objectively, you think you're saving time, but you're really not. You're just putting yourself under undue pressure to save no time. It's kind of like tailgating. Like even if on a half-hour drive, even if you tailgate in speed, I mean, what do you save? 4 minutes?
Right.
On that drive? Like you're not doing anything with those 4 minutes anyway. So even if you do save it, you got home 4 minutes earlier and you're going to do the same damn thing you'd be doing anyway. So that's it. By the way, and so I'm clear. My wife violently disagrees with me on this topic. So maybe there'll be a day where she runs and makes the flight to our vacation and I don't. And then she'll be able to have an I told you so over me. But I doubt it.
Right. Well, there's some free travel advice for as well. Maybe we'll have to release that portion before the holidays.
That's right.
People out.
Save people.
Yeah, just get there earlier. So, through your work, especially with the athletes, get to kind of look back into younger football players' eyes, younger athletes. Of all the things you've learned, from wanting to coach coaches right out of college to the experiences and what you're doing now with daily discipline, you could go back and tell 16-year-old Brian one truth that you've learned to stick to. What would that be?
Get on the path of discipline earlier because you'll get everywhere you want to go faster. I mean, it's no doubt. I mean, there's all kinds of truths, right? I mean, I would have told myself to go back and be more appreciative of my parents, of people who invested into me. But part of the journey is, this is the part of the journey all of us have is fighting through that selfish side of us. We still all face that, right? I certainly would like to have that. I think it's always a good reminder just to appreciate the people who are in your life, period. And maybe just because it's top of mind for me, because I'm coming, after losing my friend here last week, and I'm naturally wired that way to connect and be with the people all the time. But I would have certainly, keep flexing on that.
Mm-hmm.
The big one though for me that is mine is I would have told myself, get on the path of discipline earlier, stay on it. When I drifted off of it, just jump back on it. Don't worry about consistency. Just worry about whether you're on that path. 3 good weeks and 1 off week is fine. Right? Don't let that 1 off week turn into, oh, well, I was inconsistent in the 1 off week, so I take 6 weeks off now. No, it's just get on the path of discipline earlier, because it's just going to shorten everything later and put me in a position to do, more things, better things, and frankly, more of what I want to be doing. So that would be it without a doubt.
Rock on. So last question of the 8. One of the things we like to end with, what is your definition of success? I always find there's a lot of different answers out there, but I always love hearing what drives people and how they define that.
So my definition of success, it's 2 things that come to my mind. And really in a phrase, right? My definition of success is living a life worthy of your calling. It's my definition. And so for me, it's worthiness and what's your calling, and did you answer it? Gotcha. And, I think you find, some people, they don't pick up that call, or they don't follow the calling. They do something that either just pays the bills and they kind of mail it in.
Yeah.
They do what they think they were supposed to do, or they go with something flashy or famous, or pursuing the some of the more hollow and shallow stuff. And then other people will kind of be in and out of that, but they don't focus on worthiness. And so for me, and I think this is timeless, right? You can have all the success in the world, but if you don't feel like you did it in a worthy fashion, it's empty. You can be making sandwiches at Subway, or, standing on a stage performing for 80,000 people, or, be a millionaire or billionaire. But if you don't feel like you're being true to your calling, it's shallow. A calling can be as simple as sweeping floors. It can be as big as, speaking to big audiences and being president of the United States. I mean, it can be anywhere in between. And worthiness is the same way. There's an unbelievable amount of worthiness. And I mean this, I genuinely mean, there is an unbelievable amount of worthiness in making a Subway sandwich for people on a shift in a sandwich shop, because you are providing, right? You are there, and you have a job, and you have a role, and you are smiling at them, and they are coming to you for something to eat, and you are delivering to, there's worthiness there.
Yeah.
And there's worthiness, coaching big sports, and there's worthiness in coaching girls lacrosse, and so that's for me is being worthy of my calling. And my calling are the things that I choose to pursue, what I'm going after, what I feel like I'm capable of. Worthiness is whether or not A, I'm good enough, and B, whether or not I put my standard into that calling as best as I possibly could. If I can lock those 2 things down, it doesn't matter what the result is, success has been aligned and fulfilled for me.